Welcome to episode number 228, where I'm speaking with Robin Mastro about Vastu altars. Robin takes us on the journey of her research, shares with us the key elements of a Vastu altar, along with guidelines on how to set up our own health and well-being altar. She also shares with us some of the client outcomes from these powerful sacred spaces, so please stay tuned. Welcome to the Elements of Ayurveda podcast. I'm your host, Colette, and I hope to educate and empower you to take charge of your health and well-being, preventing disease in the body and mind so that you can thrive in life. I will be sharing the holistic teachings of Ayurveda, which is the ancient healing tradition from India. Now, if you're new to Ayurveda, I recommend listening to the first couple of episodes where I do an introduction to Ayurveda and the mind-body types. And if you like the content, please be sure to subscribe or follow the podcast so the new episodes will automatically download for you. Also, you may want to check out my private Elements community, which is away from social media. It's a safe space for like-minded people to come together, to connect, to share, to support each other, and to continue the conversation from the podcast episodes. Check out the link in the show notes or visit my website, elementshealingandwellbeing.com, and just click on the community tab. And I hope to connect with you there. Thanks for listening. And now here's a new episode. Hello, and welcome back to the Elements of Ayurveda podcast. I'm very happy to welcome Robin Mastro today, who is co-founder of Vastu Creations and the American Institute of Vastu, consultancy, design, and educational companies that focus on eliminating environmental stress for greater productivity, improved health, and well-being. Robin has been a teacher of meditation and Vedic breathing for the Art of Living Foundation for over 25 years. Her research in accessing the power of altars in the Vedic tradition led her to study ancient cultures around the world and how they connected with unseen forces to support their daily lives. She has also co-authored 3 award-winning books on Vastu: Altars of Power and Grace, The Way of Vastu, and Making Room for Mr. Right. For decades, Robin has worked with students and clients to live healthier, more harmonious, and productive lives. She is in service to others through her award-winning books, courses, and ongoing offerings. Robin, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Colette, for the opportunity to speak to all of your listeners all around the world.
Well, I'm very excited to have this conversation because we've never talked about altars on the podcast before. So I'm really ready to get into this conversation and have you spread all this wisdom on altars and setting up altars in our home, which I think is really exciting. So, Robin, I'd like to start with first of all, how did you become interested in researching altars in the Vedic tradition? It's a really interesting line of research.
Well, it is. And I began actually creating altars before I met Michael, who is my husband and a Vedic scholar and focused on the science of Vastu. And we can talk about Vastu in a little bit if we really want to. But way back then, years before I met Michael, this was a couple of years before I met Michael, I was married to somebody else, and we had a pretty tumultuous relationship when it came to finances. And we lost everything 3 times. And the last time I had a infant, and it was tough raising an infant really homeless at that point. And if it hadn't been for friends, I wouldn't really have known what to do. And finally, after basically house sitting for friends for a couple of months, we landed a place to live. And I was very, very grateful to have the opportunity to settle in once again in my own place. And I remember coming back to my meditation practices after all of this chaos that we were living through. And in one of these meditations, I had an incredible vision, and it was as if I was looking into a forest clearing. And in that clearing, there was people gathering around a central focus. And I was able to see that people were placing the elements in very specific ways. And within that, in that environment, they had this beautiful hammered gold chalice. And it appeared that everybody was putting something into that chalice that had value to them. And it was dusk, and you could see the moon coming up, and the moon was full. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm witnessing something. I mean, it was like I was observing a ceremony while still living in the time I was living in. And this was an ancient ceremony. And I began to feel like it was almost like it was a Druid ceremony. It was so ancient and beautiful. And I remember coming out of that, and here we were pretty much penniless. Thanks to my husband's family, we had been able to afford this house, or this townhouse that we were living in. And we didn't have a lot of money of our own. So I thought the moon was building, and I thought, I'm going to create one of these altars. And so, one of these environments. And at that point, I didn't really know that they were altars, but I remember laying the elements out in the way that I saw them do that. And I put it on a little deck that I had off of the bedroom. And in it, I remember that the elements had a significance in their direction. So I placed them, and in the center, I didn't obviously have a golden chalice. So I took my salad bowl and I put aluminum foil down into it and put that in the middle. And in it, I put everything that I had of value. I had some jewelry, I had my checkbook, I had my credit cards, and I just threw everything in that I thought, okay, I want to see what happens. And it was a couple of days before the full moon, and I thought, okay, well, this is safe. I'm a couple of floors up from the ground floor, and so I know that nobody's going to come and steal on my things. I just kept it out there, and I remember right before the moon became full, I went out there and I kneeled in front of it, and I asked the divine for support. And I never bounced a check again. I never had lived in survival since that time. And every month I do this full moon ceremony. And it was maybe 2 years later, I separated from that husband that I was married to, and I met Michael, and we became friends. And then a couple of years after that, we actually started a relationship, and he started teaching me about Vastu. And I thought it was very fascinating. And when I looked at how Vastu is lined up, I could see that it was very similar to what I had been doing already with the altars that I was creating. So that was kind of the beginning of it all for me.
Fascinating that you saw that, you experienced that in a meditation, and then had the impulse to bring that into your life.
Yes, I kind of felt like there was something very powerful. I don't think I've had a whole lot of those kinds of experiences where you're like in an awaking dream. And it's like, why was I given this opportunity to see this fascinating ritual happening in front of me? And it was a couple of years after that, I would say, I remember going back to school for my master's, and I have to be honest, I have no idea how I landed in this program, except again, it was kind of this very altered situation where I had a scare with a health scare that turned out to be nothing. But in that scare, I realized that if I were to pass away quickly, what would I have really left? Well, what did I come here to do? Like that question came into my mind, and I thought, I'm a good mom. I'm a good wife. I'm a good daughter. But did I come here to do what I was supposed to do? So I remember leafing through a local newspaper up in Seattle where I was living at the time, and I saw this program at a university that seemed very intriguing. And it was called Whole Systems Design. And I don't think that they even have this program anymore. So I think it was created just for me when I think about that. And I applied to the program and I got in. And within 3 weeks, I was in this program at the university. And it came to be that the head of the department and my advisor were both PhD architects. And a year into the program, we had to state what we wanted the focus of our graduate project to be. And Michael and I were we had bought a house and we were renovating it, and we were about to leave for India. And I thought, oh my gosh, if it was almost like I had too much on my plate. I had the graduate program, the renovation, and this trip plan. And I said, if I may have to just drop out of school for this semester unless I can incorporate what I'm doing in India and to this house in my graduate work. And so when I was in India, I didn't really know what that was going to be. So when I was in India, everywhere you go, you see altars. And I just thought, and they do a sacred ceremony in India called puja, and they have a specific way that they set up their puja table or their altar in order to perform sacred ceremony. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't according to Vastu, which I was very much more educated on than this specific kind of ceremony. And I thought, what if we take the most powerful elements in Vastu and create small environments? What would that be? What would happen? And that's what I took back to my advisor at the college I was in and to the head of the department. And they thought it was a fascinating concept. So that's kind of how it all started.
That's amazing. And how you combined everything together. Your studies, the trip to India, and the renovation as well.
I knew for a fact that when I started this course of study, that I wanted to come out the other side with something relevant to do with my life. And I felt it has really been divinely guided. My first book, Altars of Power and Grace, was actually based on my graduate work in whole systems design. And it was the basis of the book was that final thesis, that final paper, all that research that I did to see if these altars actually worked. And I have to say, it surprised everybody how powerful they were. They actually started changing people's lives.
That's amazing. Okay. I'm going to have you talk about that and give us some examples later on. And of course, I wanted to remind people that Michael, that Robin is referring to, is Michael Mastro, Robin's husband. And we just did a recent podcast episode with Michael on Vastu Shastra, which is very, very exciting and very interesting as well. And so now you both are co-founders of Vastu Creations and, bringing this work into the world, which is amazing. And Robin, I'd like to talk to you now about some of the key elements of an altar according to Vastu.
Okay. Well, the science of Vastu is a directional science. And what I found was that each direction has an aspiration attached to it. So the basic premise of Vastu and these altars is that the elements have specific locations. So always air is going to be in the northwest on an altar. Always the water element is going to be in the northeast, the fire element is going to be in the southeast, and the earth element is going to be in the southwest. That's the given on the basic 4 elements: earth, air, water, fire. And in the middle is the space element. So you're basically creating a square with the in the very middle, the space element, because in Vastu, we feel all the other elements came out of the space element. So it is in the center. And it is in the center that you place your offering tray. And it is within the offering tray that you place all that you desire, specifically according to where the altar is placed. So in the northwest is a relationship altar. The north is an abundance altar. The northeast is spirituality and a kind of an abundance of spiritual and health benefits. In the east is specifically health. In the southeast is actually, when you look at how Vastu is set up, the southeast is usually the kitchen because it's the home of the fire element, but it's also where your passion and your good health comes from. And for me also, it is when something very intense is happening in your life. So we call that the transformation altar. It's where you go when you don't have all the answers, like something big is happening in your life that feels overwhelming, and you're humbled to the point where you ask for help from the divine in a very specific way because you don't have all the answers. And so this is an altar that you would build if you're having intense issues with a family member. You've lost your job. You're injured to the point where you feel like you need help and you don't know where to turn. It's really like an emergency altar, like you need that support. And in the south is your career and recognition altar. And in the southwest is your helpful people altar. And the west is your creativity altar. And so you have these themes for the different, or the aspirations where you place the altars. And in the very center, like I said before, is the space element, but it's also, we place altars that are not specific for the directions. Like that's where I place a full moon altar. It doesn't have to be against a wall in your room or your home. It can be in the center area of your living room or your activity space, because it is an altar that doesn't stay up for very long. You build it as the moon is gaining fullness, and then you take it down as the moon starts waning.
And so with that one, you're using the power of the full moon. And like you did in your first altar that you built on your deck, are you putting things in the center that you want to bring into your life?
Yes. I always say to people that you create the altar, you place the elements, and then you decorate, because you need that altar to be something so beautiful to you that you love it, because it's the love that feeds the altar. It supports the activation of the igniting ceremony that you do so that it continues to have power. And so you want that altar to be something that when you look at it, you go, I love this. And you will know when you love it. You know, it's kind of one of those things that you're gathering decorative pieces that have meaning to you, and you place those on the altar. And I think especially for women, we all kind of collect little things. We put them on windowsills. We have, them maybe where we get ready in the morning, little mementos that we've kept. Some people have curio cabinets where they have family heirlooms, and it's your opportunity to use them to create sacred space.
Exactly. And objects that have lots of meaning for you as well.
Yes.
So I'd love to talk about setting up an altar, and seeing as this is a health and well-being podcast, I'd love if you could take us through how we would set up a health and well-being altar in our home and the direction of that and so on.
Okay. So a health and well-being altar, you would place against an east wall. And if you, and that means that when you are looking at it, the east is in front of you. And the way you can figure that out is most everybody has a cell phone these days, and on that is a compass. And you just can use that compass to find what that direction is. So what you do is that you can be on a table. I have actually an altar that I have with just a box, and on top of it, I put a tray. Actually, I covered the box with a shawl, and then I put a tray on top of it, and then I place items on that. So it could be on a windowsill if the windowsill is deep enough to hold all the elements. I actually do have a windowsill in my kitchen where all the elements are very small, so they fit on a regular size windowsill. Some people make their altars larger, and some people put them on like a nightstand. So it can really go anywhere. So the first thing I would make sure is that the surface is clean. You could place a handkerchief or a doily or a shawl over the space if you want to as a decorative element. The colors for the east are yellow and white, and somewhere on the altar they can be represented. Also, the metal for that altar is gold. So, because that's where the sun comes up and it is illuminating and vibrant. And so that metal is connected to that morning sun. And so we place the altar with the air element in the northwest, and the air element can be a feather. It can be, there are standing wind chimes that people use. I think mostly the common one is either a feather or incense. And incense can be used in that direction as well as it can be used in the southeast as the fire element. So let's go around the altar and start with the northwest. So the northwest is the feather or the incense. And the northeast is the water element. And the water element can be a clear small vase or a teacup with water. Actually, it probably should be more clear than opaque because you want to be able to see the water. And some people put flowers, fresh flowers in it, if it is a little vase. And the thing is that we do not ever use dried flowers on an altar because we can use silk or fresh flowers because we want our dreams to be as alive as the flowers or as beautiful. We don't want them to die. So we just want to keep that fresh water with either silk flowers in it or the fresh flowers, the freshly cut flowers. And then in the southeast is the fire element. The fire element is either a candle, and that can be a real candle or one of those electric candles. It could be a Himalayan salt lamp, or it could also be the incense that you have as a possibility for the northwest. And then in the southwest, is the earth element. And it could be a small bowl of uncooked rice. It could be crystals. It could be a small plant. It could actually even be a container of soil from the garden. In the center is the offering tray. And that's where you'll put your deepest desires. And I usually like to write them out on a small Post-it size piece of paper, unlined, in pencil. And people ask me, why pencil and why unlined? Well, that's just my personal preference. I just want to be able to write in any way that I like and be able to erase it if I feel like I want to change something. And what I've noticed over the years is that the divine knows what's most important for you. So you really don't want to get so specific that you stand in the way of the possibilities that can occur. Mm-hmm. So I would keep your dreams and desires as open-ended as possible and allow what is supposed to be for you to come forward. That's kind of the magic part of these altars. And I think it's also what separates me out from my husband being the architect and scholar of the Vedic knowledge. I'm more of the combining of the Vedic knowledge with the, more of the spiritual, divine feminine, divine masculine energy, which to me is, it creates more of the beauty, and allowing that ritual for manifestation to occur.
Beautiful. And that's actually what I wanted to talk to you about, the rituals then. Obviously, it's very unique to each person, but for somebody who's absolutely new to altars, what kind of ritual would you suggest? And again, normally it's person specific, but if you were to suggest to somebody for a health and well-being altar, what suggestions would you give them?
Well, I feel like we have several in altars of power and grace, some ways to ignite the altar, and also in the giveaway that I'm offering everybody, your audience, there is one of the rituals to ignite the altar that is there. And I think the thing that we've noticed is whatever you do, you need to feel deeply. It is these feelings and the willingness to surrender the agenda to the divine and trusting that what you've done has power and knowing that you can co-create with the divine. It's very empowering. And so I think it's, igniting the altar is very important, but it's also taking time in front of your altar that really supports the altar's efficacy. So it's like feeding a child. You give it love and it loves you back, and it's something in Vastu that I have become very, very aware of. And that is the altars are alive. Just like when Michael does Vastu for somebody's home or workspace, once he has the yantras, which is a whole nother conversation. Once he has these energetic devices that balance the environment up in a home or office, it's like it creates a synergy between this energetic field, and things start changing.
I agree that the energy you bring to your altar is really important. For me, I love practicing my yoga and mindfulness in front of my altar every morning. And that's how I feel I'm feeding it energy and I have a nice big Ganesha on my altar, and it's full of personal mementos for me, and I just love that time every morning. Very still, very quiet, and that peaceful morning energy with my altar is really sacred to me.
Well, and I think that, Colette, speaks volumes to your spiritual work, and knowing that altar is really being supported by all the inner work that you are doing, because basically that's the truth. It's like if you saw that it's waiting for your attention, basically. The divine is just waiting for us to pay attention.
Yes.
I mean, we go out in nature and we're walking and we've got our headphones on. We're totally focused on what we're doing, but we forget that the universe is alive and ready to support it. If we just paid attention, if we just connected. And I think that's what this altar is. It's like the universe in perfect order. And it is, once it's ignited, it's like a homing device for your highest intentions to come into physical form. And it's very, very powerful.
This episode is sponsored by Kerala Ayurveda Academy. Do you wish to lead a more holistic life and guide others to do the same? Kerala Ayurveda Academy welcomes you to align with nature's rhythms and build a foundation in traditional Vedic science. Spring certification program starts soon for all levels of learning, and you can study online or in person. To learn more, visit keralaayurveda.us/courses. You'll also find that link in the show notes.
So one of the first person or the first couple that I actually did an altar for as part of my research were a gay couple that lived up the street from me. And I had known them for years. I knew them before they became a couple individually. They were like two of my best buddies. And I went to do their altar. And like you, they already had an altar. And they were very protective of their altar. I went into their bedroom, and there was this ginormous altar with every deity in the universe you can imagine. And I just, and I sat, and it was against a north wall. So that's an abundance altar. And I said, can I just move a few things around? That was very threatening to them. And I did. And I said, just call me next week. Let me know what happens. Because I didn't know. Nobody knew at that point. The very next day I get a phone call. And my friend said, "Oh my God, you wouldn't believe what just happened." And I said, What are you talking about? And he said, years ago, we sold a piece of property on the floodplains of Maple Valley, which was on the east side of Seattle, across Lake Washington, way out in the boonies. And he said, we sold it for hardly anything, with the agreement that if they sold it, we would get a percentage. And I got a phone call this morning, and it was from one of the husband of the couple. And he said, I've been trying to track you down for a year. And yesterday, somebody out of the blue I talked to gave me your phone number. He said, I've got a check for $15,000 for you.
Oh my goodness.
We sold that piece of property. And something happened every single day after that to them. Mm-hmm. Now, I can say that something happens for everybody. Sometimes it's more subtle. Sometimes it's like this. But everybody experiences something. And I truly believe it's the people who, like your listeners, who are thoughtful and who are serious about their own personal development and actually take that time to connect to the divine in their own ways. Those people notice the subtle changes more quickly.
Yes, absolutely. There's a lot more awareness there. Yeah, absolutely. That's a great story. Absolutely amazing. And, it just shows the power of when you know the directions, because you're working with the energy of nature, right? In regards to directional energy.
You definitely are. And like I said, I mean, if you realize that your home, your physical environment has a consciousness that can support you, it changes the game plan. I mean, we a lot of the times kind of feel powerless in our lives. Things happen and we have, we feel like we're buffeted back and forth, especially during COVID. I think people feel like totally, out of their element, because we're used to having the ability to feel more in charge of our lives. And when it happens to the entire world, we have to pay attention. So part of it to me is like, we are not aligned with the natural world. Yes. We're just not.
I agree. And I think that's led to a lot of problems in our world, is our disconnection to Mother Nature. And that connection that we used to have, and we used to really, I believe, feel those subtle energies before, just like animals have that sense of feeling energy. And I believe we used to have that as well, but we've lost it over time.
We have. And I think, I could go on a whole thing about what's happened in the last 2,000 years, but I think when there was more of a divine feminine focused consciousness on the planet, where we really honored the mother, our lives were more connected. We weren't so insulated. We had a sense that the natural world wasn't something that we had to protect ourselves from.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, Rob. And I think we've lost that balance between the masculine and the feminine, and both have their strengths, and both need to come together as in a balance, rather than one side versus the other. And so we just lost that balance. So we need to reconnect that. And by all of us doing our work and setting up our lives to be in tune with nature, as in Ayurveda, and doing things in our home like altars, and making sure that we're in alignment as much as possible, we each individually can send out that ripple effect into the world, I believe, to make this shift. And this is where we need to go in order for everybody in the world to have a fulfilling life.
Well, and I think also, it's like we just don't feel very powerful in our lives. We don't we feel more at the effect. And so these altars really give you a focal point to connect to nature in a way that is very, very empowering. It is magnetic energy that occurs when we create an environment like this. It just magnetizes. It's like a funnel to the divine. Once it's ignited, it just brings things into your life. And sometimes we have to clear things out before that shift really occurs. And so for some people, I know that some people, when they get their Vastu done, they feel like they go through like a cleansing, like we do in Ayurveda, where we get rid of the toxins and, allow ourselves to really feel the divinity that is supported within the container of our body, or our physical environment outside of the body. And that's kind of the gift of Vastu. It is the body of your body. It kind of affects the physical world in a very unique way. And yet it does have very similar principles to Ayurveda. And, as the layout of the Vastu or the altar, it kind of speaks to how the energy enters an environment and how it supports us and what it does when things are blocked.
Yes, indeed. And as you say, it empowers a person to be an active participant in Ayurveda, in their own health and well-being. And then with an altar, in the manifestation of what they want in their lives, but also it brings a lot of wonder and curiosity and that kind of that awe that you are that participant and that you have that power to manifest what you want in your life.
And that, I just love the fact that you said that, because that is really key to anything being successful, is that we keep our minds open. And that curiosity, it's like, you don't have to believe this. I swear, you don't have to believe that these altars actually are this powerful. Just be open-minded, because if you do them, they work. And that's just, you don't have to believe in anything. Your altar doesn't have to be decorated with a bunch of Vedic or Hindu deities. You don't really need any of that. You just need to place the elements and love it and ignite the altar and trust that, with your curiosity, that you just feed it with your love and admiration, and something is going to happen.
Yes, indeed. Beautiful. And Robin, I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about your book and your award-winning book, right? Altars of Power and Grace.
Well, as I said before that, the basis for that book is my graduate work. And I created this book. I wanted it to be as beautiful I wanted it to admit beauty. So it's 4-color. It won 10 National Literary Awards the year it came out. It won Book of the Year 4 times that year.
Wow.
It's kind of like a small sacred space in itself. I wanted, I spent a lot of time, energy, and money creating the book. And then we went about trying to sell it to publishers. And what I realized is that they wanted to change it to not look as beautiful. And so I ended up publishing it. We created a publishing company and published it ourselves.
Oh, wow.
And so I learned a lot about the industry. I learned a lot about printing, but I got what I wanted. And unfortunately, and probably fortunately, with COVID, we couldn't continue printing the book because the book came from China. And even before that, I started questioning, I don't even know where this paper comes from, or this ink. And I kind of felt that maybe the day of having a physical copy, even though it is the most gorgeous book, that it maybe just digitally it would convey the same, and thank God it does. And the book was designed. I collaborated with these 2 kids. They were just teenagers almost at the time, probably early 20s, late teens, who grew up on an ashram in the United States. And they, I remember going to their studios. They worked for Mandala Books, which makes these beautiful books, gorgeous, gorgeous books. And their offices were in Marin County. I don't even know if they're still around, but these kids' office in this publishing company was like a giant altar. It was like a shrine, and they had deities everywhere, and they were playing rock music. So it was an interesting combination. And they created 2 beautiful books for us. This book, Altars of Power and Grace, and our second book, The Way of Vastu, Creating Prosperity Through the Power of the Vedas. So both of these books are award-winning books, gorgeously designed. My third book actually was published by Simon & Schuster, and they came to us, which was pretty awesome. We have over the years done presentations at health and healing resorts around the United States. And we were at a resort called Canyon Ranch in Arizona. And a woman came up to us after our event and said, I've never heard of your books before. And she said, I own the largest African-American bookstore conglomerate in the United States. Mm-hmm. And I know people in New York. Send me your books and I'll pass them along. And within a month, the senior editor for Simon & Schuster called me and she told me she loved my books. And I said, well, I'm coming to New York in a couple of months. She said, do you have anything ready? And I said, well, I can make something ready. And within that time, I went to New York and I had the book proposal for our third book, plus chapters, which was a lot of work. And anyway, within a week, they gave me an offer. And the third book is on relationships. And it's called Making Room for Mr. Right, How to Attract the Love of Your Life. And it's based on Vedic knowledge. Wow. And some of that information is in there is how I attracted Michael into my life. So I know that this stuff works.
Very interesting. Well, and talking about this stuff works, I'd love for you, as we finish up here, just share one more story with us of something you'd like to share about another, either personally or a client story, because that's just fascinating to hear real life examples.
Sure. We have some friends who live here in the San Diego area, and they had an elderly dog who appeared like it was ready to pass. And their daughter was probably 8 or 9 at the time, not sure exactly, but young, and wasn't ready to let go of the dog. And so they built a health altar for their dog. Mm-hmm. And they put a lot of love into it. They ignited the altar, and that dog lived another 3 years. So I know this information may seem unusual, but I know how it's really helped people all over the world. We also have so many of what we call our kids who came from India very early on, and they were young, and now we would do altars in their offices whenever they changed offices. They were all in the tech industry, and now those kids are executives at Microsoft and Amazon and Pandora, Sirius XM, Nordstrom's, which is a big clothing store here in the United States. And they still want us to come in and do the Vastu on their environments and create altars as well. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I have a lot of other stories, but I think it gives you an idea that this information empowers people. It really supports people's lives. And the altars are an enhancement to the Vastu. And they really do focus the energy specifically on what it is you desire.
Yeah, and I think that's it, Robin, isn't it? It's intention setting and really, like you said, focusing on what you desire and also putting energy into that, and purposely on a daily or regular basis is putting your intention, your energy into what you desire.
Yeah, and the altar is just a way of you bringing that intention into form. Mm-hmm. And it's just a formula that works.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And seeing that altar on a daily basis is a daily reminder of your intention and your desires.
Also, as well, it is a reminder that you're connected to something greater than just your small mind, body. Mm-hmm. You have this connection to spirit in a way that is profound. Mm-hmm. And that if you realize how awesome that is, it is awe-inspiring to know that you have this device, this magnetic device that supports your life, and that the more you take your time in front of that altar to do your deeper inner work, your journaling, your yoga, your meditation, whatever it is that you do, dancing, exercise, whatever it is, you have that altar. It's a part of your life, and see it as alive. If you do that and support it, change the flowers, the water, light the candle and the incense, and just know that you're communing with the divine while you're doing that, it will support you on an ongoing basis. And if you find that it's not working for you, you just take all the elements off, clean the surface, and put everything back and reignite it. But it will work.
Yeah. Beautiful. Great. And you mentioned earlier, Robin, that you have a giveaway for the listeners that would help them with setting up their altar. Can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Yes. It is a health and well-being altar. It is an excerpt from our first book, Altars of Power and Grace. And I think it will give the listeners a sense of the potential that is waiting for them because of this sacred science. And I hope that it works for everybody, and that you give it a try.
Absolutely. Well, that's very kind of you. And please go to the link in the show notes to find that excerpt from the book, Altars of Power and Grace. And Robin, can you also tell the listeners where they can go to find out more about you and your other offerings? And I know you're working on some courses as well.
Yes. Our website is Vastu, Vastu Creations.com. And in that are courses, products, and services connected to the science of Vastu, as well as Michael and I are developing 3 different courses right now. The ones that I'm developing are on altars. I'm developing an introductory level course that is very, very full of incredible knowledge. And as I've been involved in this for over 25 years, so I have a lot to offer in this course, and I feel like it's time that I distribute this knowledge in a more expansive way. So the first level is more about the how to and what to utilize, and more of the action steps. The second level is more of how to build that incredible connection with the divine within the self, and how to bring that into your work with the altars. And that level also has an option to lead to certification to become an altars practitioner. And I have been asked for over 20 years to develop these courses, and I feel the timing is perfect to do this now.
Beautiful. The time has come. That's great. And so for people to keep in touch with you on when those courses go live, because you're still in development mode right now, is a newsletter the best way?
Well, the offering that we're using for your listeners is a way to get on our mailing list.
Great.
You can also go to our website and sign up. I know there is another ebook offering if people sign up on the website, but one way or the other, you'll be on our list.
Great. And
you will receive our newsletters and ways to connect with us on the blog, and just how to be more educated on what it is that we do.
Wonderful. Well, it's fascinating work that yourself and Michael do, and it's lovely that you're doing it together.
Well, it was wonderful talking with you, Colette. Thank you for the opportunity to present this knowledge.
Thank you. Really interesting information. I appreciate this wonderful work you're doing in the world, and best wishes to you.
Thank you so much.
Bye for now. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Robin, and please check out the show notes for that download for the Health and Wellbeing Altar, and also the link to get over to the website of VastuCreations.com. Also in the show notes, you'll find a link to my online offerings. I offer online consultations, at-home cleanses tailored to you, and the Daily Habits for Holistic Health program. So check those out as well. If you haven't already subscribed to the podcast or followed the podcast, please do so. And if you would like to rate and review it, I would really appreciate that. If you want to join the like-minded community over on my website, a private community specifically for the podcast, you can check out that link in the show notes or visit my website, elementshealingandwellbeing.com, and go to the community tab. Also, check me out on social media under Elements Healing and Wellbeing on Instagram and Facebook. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, take good care of yourself, be well, and bye for now. Slán go fóill.